Welcome to another Pro Tools tutorial. You have to excuse my voice today, it's a little bit croaky because I've got a bit of a cold, but I'll do my best. So in this video we'll be looking at things to consider when using video in Pro Tools. This will include frame rates, timecode rates, optimized video codecs, and of course the Avid Video Engine. So I'll start by bringing a video file into an empty session. Okay, so you can either drag and drop, or I could have done File, Import Video. And at this point we get the Video Import Options dialog. Now at the top we have up to 3 choices. On Pro Tools HD you can have multiple video tracks in a session, so if you do have existing tracks you have the option of putting the new video onto the main video track. In this case I've not got one, so that's greyed out, and so I have the option of either dropping it onto a new track or just into the clip list. This wouldn't be very useful, so I will actually choose new track. In terms of the location, we have a drop down menu here, 4 choices: session start, the selection as in where you've dropped it, spot. If you choose that, it will bring up the spot dialog and you can manually type in a timecode location. If your session also has a song start identified, as would be the case for certain music projects, then that will be an option as well. I'll just drop this at the session start. If I wanted to, I could bring in the audio from the file. For the purposes of this, I'm not going to bother. On Pro Tools HD, because we can bring in multiple clips, I also have the option of specifying a gap between those clips. So I'll just click OK, and there we have the video track. Video tracks in Pro Tools have 2 display options: frames, which gives you a bit of an indication of what's going on in the video, and it's dependent on both the zoom level and also the track height as to exactly how many of these preview images you'll see. That's fine most of the time. If your computer's struggling a bit to process these because every time you zoom out or change the view it has to recalculate these preview images, so you may sometimes prefer blocks view, which just represents the video as a solid block. You'll notice that we've got this indicator on the video track, which is currently displaying in red. This is the video engine rate, and it's the frame rate of the video you've just imported. Generally, you'll want to match the timecode rate of your session to the frame rate of the video. So I'll just open the session setup window, Command 2, maybe I'll close this for now, and I'll set the timecode rate to whatever the video frame rate is. So this one is 29.97 frames per second, so I'll just set the timecode rate to match that. And when the session timecode rate matches the video engine rate, this indicator turns white. It's generally best to set this when you first import the video, and it ensures that your timecode grid matches up correctly with the actual frames of your video. If you're using Pro Tools HD with multiple video clips in your session, then all of the video will have to be of the same frame rate. You can't have mixed frame rates in a session. In the I/O section of the video track, there's a few settings to consider. The first is the project type selector. This is actually set wrong for this project. This should be, in my project, set to 1080p 29.97. Most of the time, this should be set so it matches the resolution and frame rate of the video, but it can be useful to change the setting when you're using multiple video clips in the session of different resolutions. So as I mentioned, all of the video will have to be the same frame rate, but you can mix resolutions, and if you're doing that, then you set the project type to best match the video in your session. So for example, if you're using 6 video clips and 5 of them are 1080p, but one is 720p, you'd probably set this to 1080p and the appropriate frame rate. The next setting is video quality. Full quality will run your video at its full resolution, or full image raster to give it its proper name, using a bit depth of 8 bits. Full quality 10-bit will be available if you have 10-bit video in the session. Again, this is full resolution, but it will run with 10-bit colour. Draft is actually still full resolution, but uses about a quarter of the image information by subsampling the colour. It's still 8-bit though. And finally, we've got best performance. Once again, full image resolution, but using about 1/16 of the image information, again by subsampling the colour. This would be useful if your computer was struggling to run video smoothly. There is actually an output settings option, which is currently greyed out on my system, but it comes into play when you're using a video output device to display the video on a separate monitor. In the standard version of Pro Tools, you can only have 1 video track per session, and that track can only have 1 video clip on it. In Pro Tools HD, you can have up to 64 video tracks in a session, and each track can have multiple video clips on it. So I can create several video tracks, maybe I'll just create another 4, and I can also actually copy and paste selectively bits of the video onto other tracks. So Pro Tools HD does offer certain limited video editing options, but it's not so you can construct a video, it's more just so you can conveniently divide and move clips within the session. So, whilst I can have several video tracks in the session, only one track can be online or viewable at any given time. Which one is visible is governed by the Video Online button, which you can see here. The online track is the one with the blue highlight to this button. You can actually toggle through the online status of each video track using the shortcut Shift-J. So if I do that, it toggles which one is actually active. Or if you just want to toggle the current track online and offline, then it's Shift-Command-J, like that. Next, I'll try to import another video file into this session. This one actually has a different frame rate, so if I try and drop this in, we get all these options as usual, but when I click OK, you'll see that it comes up with this notification, which tells me that it can't import it because it doesn't have the same frame rate as the current video in the session. In order to import this into the session, I would have to either remove all existing video from the session, or frame rate convert this one using some separate software to match everything else in the session. I think what I'll do is remove all existing video, so I'll just delete these tracks. Then I have to actually remove the video clips, so I'll select them all, and there's two ways of doing this. I can either right click and choose clear, or I could do the same thing by going to the clip list menu, clicking clear there, or it's Shift Command B, and then remove. And now that's gone, I should just be able to drag and drop this new video of a different frame rate into the session. Once again, I'll put it at the session start, OK. And you can see that the frame rate is different, 25 frames per second on this one, so I'll just set this to match. And it's white, which tells us that that's now set correctly. Incidentally, if you do need to toggle the video engine on or off, it's done in Setup, Playback Engine, and you can just toggle it there. If you experience problems with the Avid Video Engine though, there are a few other settings which you can check. These are found under Setup, Preferences, and then the Operation tab. So you can see at the bottom right here we've got this video section, and there are a few options to consider. The first is Enable GPU. When this is on, the video processing will be offloaded from the CPU to the graphics card. You'll generally want to have this on, but if you have a particularly slow graphics card, it can be worth trying it off too. The Prevent Tearing option is designed to prevent video artifacts caused by a discrepancy between your computer screen's refresh rate and the video frame rate. Try it out if you're seeing horizontal tearing in the video playback. There's also Enable Hardware During Scrub. This comes into effect if you're using a video output peripheral to display the video on a separate screen, and it basically lets you display the video on the monitor while scrubbing. The Play Start latency setting is worth looking at if you're on a slower computer. Set it to a higher value if you're experiencing issues. Okay, let me just talk about something relating to higher frame rates. If we go to Session Setup, you can see that the frame rates available here only go up to 30 frames per second. I'm just going to delete this from the project and remove it from the clip list. Once again, Shift Command B, remove, and I'm going to drop a video file in which is a higher frame rate, and that's this one. So if I drop this onto a track, same process again, put it at the session start, you'll see that this one is actually 59.94 frames per second. You can see we've got a bit of an Assassin's Creed thing going on for any of you gamers out there. So the problem is, Pro Tools doesn't allow you to actually set the timecode rate to match higher frame rates above 30 frames per second. So what you actually need to do in this case is set the session timecode rate to half of the video frame rate. So I'd set this one to 29.97 frames per second, and you can see that the video engine rate indicator has turned white. You can actually reference the timecode though, so this is where timecode 2 comes in. If I click here, display timecode 2, timecode 2 can't be set as a main time base for the session, but what you can do in the session setup window is set this one to match the timecode of the video. So I can set it to 59.94 and it will display the secondary timecode in this additional time base ruler. All of the video which I've used so far has used the H.264 codec. This generally works okay, but you may on occasion still experience problems with the Avid Video Engine, even after playing with all the settings I've just mentioned. Pro Tools works best with video codecs which are optimized for use with the Avid Video Engine. One such codec is Avid DNX HD. You can always tell whether or not the video in your session uses an optimized codec because a tick will be displayed in this column in the clip list if it is. As you can see, there's no tick here, so that indicates that the video in my session isn't using an optimized codec. I'm just going to get rid of this video once again actually, so let's clear this one. And then I'm going to bring in another one of the clips once again. We'll go back to this one, and of course this is a slightly different frame rate, so I'll just set the session to match. Okay, it's not optimized. So what I'm going to do is use some video software to convert this to DNx HD, and I'm going to keep it really simple. I mean, there's lots of software you could use. I'm going to use QuickTime 7. This is old software now, but it's still available for download from Apple. So you can see my current video is H.264, it's 1920 by 1080, 25 frames per second. If I go to File Export, I have the option, if I convert this to QuickTime, so it'll still be wrapped as a QuickTime file, but within that, going to Options, it will actually be Avid DNx HD. So there's plenty of options in the drop-down list, one of which is Avid DNx HD. I'll click that, and then when I've chosen that codec, in terms of resolution, I have various choices, and you can see that there's an almost bewildering list of stuff here. Generally you'll want to choose one which matches the resolution and frame rate, so 1080p 25 in this case. I could then click OK and it would process that. Because that would take a little while to process, I've actually made one in advance, so here we go, that's the DNx HD version. You can see that the file size is actually much larger than the H.264 file, but it is an optimized codec, and so will actually be easier for the video engine to deal with. If I drop this into the session, onto a new track, session start. Now both are listed in the clip list, but you can see that the DNx HD version has this tick, so it's optimized for playback with the video engine, and in theory at least, that should play back perfectly smoothly, and you shouldn't have any issues with it. So once again, I'll just clear these videos from the session, and next I'm going to show you an example where Pro Tools can sometimes misinterpret the frame rate of certain video files. And I'm going to use this video here, so I'll bring it in, drop it onto a new track at the session start. Okay, move that out of the way. And you can see that the frame rate which has been detected is an obscure non-standard frame rate. So that could either be because the video in your session genuinely is at that unusual frame rate, or on occasions with certain QuickTime files, Pro Tools can actually misinterpret the frame rate. And the problem with this is the video can run at the wrong speed, and if you end up putting sounds to it and synchronizing it, when you export it you'll find that they don't synchronize at all. So the way around this is to actually, again using video software, convert the video but manually enforce a frame rate. So if I open this again, and just for consistency I'll do it with QuickTime 7, choose export. Maybe I just want to keep it QuickTime, and let's just say for the purposes of this it's going to be fine as H.264. Okay, except what I want to do here, and this is the key setting, is manually specify the frame rate. So say for example I know this should actually be 25 frames per second. I'll put this in and then click OK, and then I would save that and export it, and when you bring it into Pro Tools it will correctly recognize the frame rate and it should run at the right speed. Let me just mention something else about Pro Tools which might initially seem irrelevant to this, but which can potentially impact on video playback. Pro Tools has a feature called Satellite Link, which allows multiple Pro Tools HD systems to be linked up for simultaneous playback. You can have up to 12 in fact, or if you have an HD system and a non-HD machine, for example a laptop, you can use Satellite Link to set the laptop up as a video satellite, which effectively means that you can run the session video itself on the laptop, with the main session and all the audio running from the HD machine. Both will run in perfect sync. The settings for this are found under the Satellites tab of the Peripherals window. I might talk about this in another video, but there's a reason why I'm mentioning it now. Let me just open up Activity Monitor. You can see that the Avid Video Engine is listed as a separate application to Pro Tools. This is a clue as to how the video engine operates. So the Avid Video Engine actually uses an internal satellite link in the background whenever it's enabled in Pro Tools, and the UDP port used is 2 above whatever you've got set under the Satellites tab here. If you do have any other satellite networks set up on the same physical network as workstations using the built-in video engine, they should not be set to this port. Also, it's theoretically possible that anything else using the same port address on the same network or subnet would also cause the same issues, so it could be worth trying a different port setting here. You'll see that when I change the port setting here, let's just change it by 2 to 284, what happens is the video engine will quit and then it will relaunch. Anyway, you may never need to use this setting, but I just thought it might be useful to be aware of. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you again next time.